I invite you to stay seated for this first scripture reading.
Good morning, church. Today's Old Testament scripture comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 41, verses 17 through 20. The poor and the needy seek water, but find one. Their tongues are parched with thirst. But I, God, will answer them myself. I, the God of Israel, will not abandon them. I will make rivers run on barren heights and fountains bubble up in the valleys. I will turn the wilderness into a lake and dry ground into a spring. I will put cedar trees in the wilderness, acacias, myrtles, and olives. In the desert, I will plant the cypress, the elm, and the evergreen side by side, so that all may see and know, all may observe and understand that the hand of God has done this, that the Holy One of Israel has created it. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
Today's gospel reading comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verse 42, and also from the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 34 through 36. Okay. The truth is, whoever gives a cup of cold water to one of these lowly ones just for being a disciple will not lack a reward. The ruler will say to those on the right, "Come, you blessed of my Abba God. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me, naked, and you clothed me. I was ill, and you comforted me, in prison, and you came to visit." Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. I want to thank.
You should need it, they'll need to turn it on right there. Is it on?
Okay, it's on. There you go. Okay. I want to thank both Mark Fancher and Lorray Brown, a dynamic husband and wife team, for agreeing to speak with us this morning about their work in advocating for the least of these, particularly low-income and working-class African Americans. Now, originally, as Deaconess Ann stated, we planned for both Mark and Lorray to speak with us this morning, but unfortunately, Lorray's feeling a bit under the weather, so she's unable to join us. So we'll miss Lorray's words. However, I think you'll find that Mark is very capable of filling in on her behalf. So I'll introduce Mark, and I'll allow you to read Lorray's background on your own time. So, as Mark says at the end of his bio, his life and perspectives are guided by his Christian faith. This is a faith very much in line with Jesus' very clear declaration in the book of Matthew that those who will inherit this new kingdom are those who directly meet the needs of those who are hungry, those who are thirsty, those who are strangers in a new land, those who are sick, and those with limited political power. Mark's career is a testament to these faith beliefs. As a lawyer, he's handled workers' rights cases at the Sugar Law Center for Economic and Social Justice. He has also been employed by the State Bar of Michigan's Access to Justice Department and the University of Michigan's Clinical Law Program. Prior to retiring, he served as the staff attorney for the Racial Justice Project of the ACLU of Michigan, where he handled cases concerning police brutality, racial profiling, and numerous other forms of racial discrimination. He also served on the legal team that prosecuted legal challenges to mass water shutoffs here in the city of Detroit, which had a disproportionate impact on working-class African Americans. Now, the legal arguments that he and his colleagues made in these lawsuits against the city and the Detroit Water and Sewage Department, that all Detroiters, even working-class African Americans, have a right to water, was impactful when made by the Michigan Welfare Rights, People's Water Board, and other activists that successfully pushed Governor Whitmer to issue a moratorium on water shutoffs during the height of COVID during 2020, and to push the city to implement its own water affordability program in 2022. Mark is also an accomplished author who has published numerous political commentaries about justice-related issues, many of which appear in Black Agenda report, about issues such as U.S. military intervention in Africa and other regions around the world, police violence in the USA, and the criminal justice system in this country as well, in addition to political repression. Now, I hope you recognize this theme that is running through his career, which points towards his concerns for justice for the least of these. Now, along these lines, I also want to point out that Mark is a member of Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Ann Arbor. And at Bethel, he leads the scholarship committee. And this is a committee that provides scholarships for graduating high school seniors. And this is a lot of work. And I know it's a lot of work because I was on the committee briefly, and I said, I'm going to have to step off this committee. But I was with him in heart. This is a lot of work because in addition to coordinating the church's annual scholarship service, they also organize a fundraiser event in which they raise money for this event, for the scholarship. Now, I want to point out that I pointed this out because Mark's son graduated from high school 6 or 7 years ago. He has his master's in journalism from Northwestern, and he's still leading this committee. And the point I'm trying to make is that, Mark's career and his church work is a testament to his desire to serve. And with that, I'll turn the mic and floor over to Mark.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know. I agree with some of what he said. I don't agree with his statement that I'll be able to fill the shoes of my wonderful wife, Lorray Brown, but I will do my best. She wanted me to express to you her true regret for not being able to be with you, and wanted me to bring you her love. She's an amazing lawyer, and in addition to her professional skill and ability and knowledge, she's also a very wise woman. And she was wise enough to heed an admonition by Mayor Coleman Young, who said, when you see a good fight, get in it. And when she saw Maureen Taylor and Marion Kramer and Sylvia Orduño engaged in a fight to end mass water shutoffs in the city of Detroit, long before I got involved, she was in that fight. And I used to enjoy hearing the stories that she told about the struggles that she and the others in Michigan Welfare Rights Organization and others were waging. But I think that my favorite was about one occasion when she and Marilyn Mullane, an attorney with legal services here in Detroit, were on a mission to go and to serve legal papers on the administrators of Detroit Water and Sewerage Department. And so Maureen and Marion and the Michigan Welfare Rights Organization had a large delegation that accompanied them, and they marched into the offices, and what they found was a line of security officers blocking the elevator. And they were told that you will not go upstairs to those offices. So they stood there and they debated with them for an extended period of time. And Michigan Welfare Rights Organization did what they do and caused a distraction, to put it mildly. And at that moment, when the security guards were distracted and were trying to deal with other situations, and Marilyn and Lorray saw an opening, they dashed into the elevator. And the security guards, well, what? These crazy women. What? And so they went into the elevator after them and dragged them out. And so as they were being dragged out, strategic always, Maureen Taylor. She had called Detroit City Councilwoman Joanne Watson, our late warrior. And at that moment, Councilwoman Watson came walking in. She was waving her fist and her finger, and she was in the faces of the security guards and everybody else who got in her way. And she said that these lawyers would go upstairs and see these administrators, and mission was accomplished. So I say this because, that type of agitation is brought on by something. People are not driven to engage in that level of struggle unless there is a serious problem. And mass water shutoffs in this city have been a problem for decades. Mercy. And I'm not talking about just shutoffs here and there. We're talking about thousands of homes of low-income families who are losing their water. And we have to understand that contrary to the lies that are told about these homes and the people and the families that live in them, these are not people who are having their water cut off because they are deadbeats or because they're not willing to pay their bills. There are a whole host of reasons why they're not paying their water bills. Sometimes it's because they are elderly and they're living on fixed incomes and they just simply cannot afford to pay market rate for water. Sometimes it's because they are physically disabled and they're not able to go out and earn the kind of money that's necessary to pay the water. Sometimes it is because they are working 2 and 3 jobs, minimum wage, and they still are not able to pay market rate for water. Sometimes it is because these are people who moved into rental properties and they inherited the debts of the previous tenants, and they're not able to pay down those debts. Sometimes it's because of the incompetence of Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, because they are not able to put together bills that are accurate and which reflect the actual water usage of the people who are the customers. Sometimes it is because DWSD has to figure out how to build them, they just take a guess, and they guess wrong. I mean, there are so many reasons why people are not able to pay market rate for water. And yet, there are people who will demonize them. There are people who will point fingers at them, and people who will say, well, these people could pay, but they just have, their priorities are not in order. That they want to buy expensive smartphones, that they want to buy flat screen TVs, that they just use their money differently than they would be able to pay. No, they simply cannot pay. And so the campaign has always been to do the logical thing. When you have people who cannot afford to pay water, you make the water affordable. It is a simple thing. All that you do is you call upon the community to act like a community. You say that those of us who are able to pay a little bit more to compensate for the amount that they can't pay, then that's what we do. And you make it simple. You just make everybody come, and the cost of having a utility is that we have to pay in order to make water affordable for people who can't afford market rate. They pay what they can pay. I mean, everybody's got to pitch in. That's what community's all about. But you can't pay what you ain't got. And so that's basically what has been the point of advocacy for the movement against mass water shutoffs for a very long time. But we are unfortunately confronting those who have been in leadership who have a very cynical view, people who choose to exploit situations, people who want to do things which are to their advantage and to the disadvantage of the least of these. And in order to really, really understand this problem, you have to, and it's particularly appropriate because this is Black History Month, you have to place it within a historical context. You have to understand that Detroit is a very special city. Historically, it has been. And I'm saying this not because of personal bias or anything else, but I'm saying this because it's objectively true. The reason that Detroit is special is because of Black people. All right, this city is one which was a magnet for people from the South. During the Great Migration and prior to it, there were people who were living under grinding oppression in the South. Slavery was bad enough. It was a horror. It was a terrible thing. But there were still people who were still living under slave-like conditions even after abolition because of the debt tenancy system or the convict lease system or because of any number of things that were put in place in order to perpetuate that situation of servitude for those who were black and oppressed. And for those who tried to rebel, there were lynchings, there were attacks, there were burnings, there were Klans people there were all kinds of things that were done in order to make life miserable for people in the South. And for people who had the wherewithal, people who were intelligent, they said, I got to get up out of here. And so when the auto industry offered opportunities for employment, there were many people who came from Arkansas, who came from Mississippi, who came from Alabama, who came up and they made their way into the plants that were manufacturing automobiles, and they were able, through their work, through their grit, through their toughness and endurance and perseverance, they were able to establish a very prosperous black middle class in the city of Detroit. And it's not just that happened, but it also was leveraged into the creation of amazing things. I mean, the world jives and dances and grooves to the sounds of Motown, but we know what brought that about. It was African creativity, African culture that drove it and made young America dance to a very special tune. We know that this is a city that gave birth to some of the most incredible political initiatives that came out of the black community. Okay, the Shrine of the Black Madonna was here. The Republic of New Africa started here. The Nation of Islam got its grounding here, and Malcolm X had some of his earliest experiences here. We had so many things that were going on in the city of Detroit that were fuel and fire for the movement for liberation for black people in this country. And we also have to understand that it's an essential part of this was the rise of Coleman Young, as I mentioned earlier, who by all objective measures was probably the best mayor that this city has had. And that's not based on because of his charisma, it's not based on anything. I mean, I'm talking about hard data and hard facts. Because the local media here in Detroit analyzed his tenure, and they said that in terms of fiscal management, he leads the race. Nobody has done better than Coleman Young. But Coleman Young was also a man who was very proud of himself and proud of his people and cared about them very deeply. And so Coleman Young said, well, I'm running this city. I'm going to make sure that my people benefit too. I'm not going to just sit here and keep this for myself. I'm going to make sure that contracts from the city go to minority-owned companies. I'm going to make sure that people of color have a place within city government. I'm going to make sure that opportunities for black entrepreneurship exist in the city. I'm going to make sure that youth programs exist for black people. And if you don't like it, get out. And unfortunately, many people did. White flight took place in droves. People went to the suburbs and they said, well, this man is uppity. This man is arrogant. This man has a lot of nerve. We're used to calling the shots and he dares to think that he is the one who's running the city. Well, I mean, how dare he? And he said, yes, I dare. And he said it with language a lot more colorful than what I'm using here. And so there was a movement that existed on the perimeter of the city of Detroit. It was, we don't know what to do with this man. He's a different kind of cat. And so they bided their time. They said, well, we will not confront him directly. We will wait. And they did. And very quietly, there was economic withdrawal from the city. Businesses started to pull out, and they started to leave along with the families. Many of the people who were important to the tax base in this city moved out. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited until Coleman Young died. And after he died, there began a process of trying to make the city of Detroit unlivable. They redlined this city in incredible ways so that it became more expensive to insure your car than to pay for your car. They began to chip away at the infrastructure of the city. They took away its public schools. They took away the Detroit Recorder's Court. They started to make inroads into trying to acquire city-owned properties. They took control of everything that was necessary to run this city, taking it away, making it impossible for it to be viable, and creating a city that was essentially unlivable. And when asked, well, why not invest in the city of Detroit, those with the money said that, well, we would not invest in a city of that kind. Look at it. It's a ruin. It's terrible. It's terrible. And many of you are witnesses to it. I mean, where this church is located, you go just a couple of blocks south of where we are now, back in the 1990s, I can tell you, I was afraid to drive down Woodward, this part of Woodward back then. I mean, it was totally black. There were no street lights. Most of the storefronts were completely abandoned. There were very creepy looking people walking down the streets. I said, this is not a city that anybody would want to live in. And it was deliberate. They were trying to make the city unlivable. They wanted to get rid of the population that was here to make way for the population that had left, to bring them back in. And the idea was that once we get rid of all of these poor black people, we can bring back the gentry. And we can bring back people who have money and who have the opportunities to make the city what we want to make it. But they ran into a problem because people of Detroit are very resilient. And these are people who would not leave. There are many people who would not leave, simply would not leave. And in desperation, they said, we will drive them out no matter what it takes. We will take their houses through tax foreclosures. We will make it impossible for them to live because we will cut off their water. Anything that was essential to life, they were stripping it so that they could get rid of all of these people. And I don't need to tell you the end of this story because now you look at the city that I just described, Woodward, as I just described it, and look at it now. Once they were able to get control of this city's government, once they were able to get control of its infrastructure, billions and billions of dollars came into this city just out of nowhere. It had always been there, but they were waiting. So when we talk about struggling against mass water shutoffs, we're not just talking about a discrete little problem. We're talking about something that was part of a much bigger scheme in order to degrade, dehumanize, and to cause severe harm to a very targeted population of people. And we must be clear about that fact. So we must understand that the strategies that have been employed in order to resist this have had unique experiences in and of themselves. You know, certainly the People's Water Board, Michigan Welfare Rights Organizations, and any number of other grassroots groups have been engaged in movement activity that has been very successful in many respects. But there reached a point where it appeared that it was necessary to wage a struggle in the courts. Okay? Many of us who were in the legal field looked at it and thought, well, there's probably not much in the way of possibility there. But Alice Jennings, local legendary civil rights lawyer, said, no, we must litigate. We must file a lawsuit in order to stop these mass water shutoffs. It has reached a point where it must happen. And so we would say things to her like, well, you know, this would be very expensive. And she would say, uh-huh. And she would say, and you know, in order to come up with a legal theory like this, I mean, boy, that's kind of, I don't know how successful that will be. And she would say, uh-huh. And so we'd say, well, and you know, we can't do that. We're going to have to find people who fit the right profile in terms of plaintiffs. And she would say, uh-huh. And she says, I'm still waiting for you to give me a reason not to file this lawsuit. And she went ahead and did it. And so the rest of us said, well, we see a good fight. Let's get in it. All right. And so we came along for the ride. The first lawsuit that was filed was one that was called Leiter versus Detroit, City of Detroit, the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department. And that case was based on two primary theories. One was that it said that mass water shutoffs constituted a deprivation of due process, procedural due process. And basically what that means is that under the Constitution, before the government can take anybody's life, liberty, or property, they have to give people an opportunity to come in and to challenge that. All right? That's basically what it means. And our theory was that Detroit Water and Sewerage Department had an extensive list of procedural steps that were supposed to be taken before anybody's water was being shut off, and that they were not following their own rules, that they were just going and shutting water off right and left. So that was one theory. The other was based on equal protection. And equal protection basically means that when you have two classes of people or entities that are similarly situated, that it's unconstitutional to treat one differently from the other. And we said that there was unequal treatment as it relates to residential water customers and those that were commercial water customers. We had a list of more than 24 major corporations and large enterprises that had debts, unpaid water bills that were 6 and 7 figures. And there were never any efforts that were made to shut off their water at all. We had any number of residential water customers who sometimes owed as little as $100, and their water was shut off summarily. And we said that that's a deprivation of equal protection rights of residential water customers. I'm leaving out a lot of details here because, as you might expect, legal proceedings are very complex and involved. But bottom line is that we lost at the trial level, we lost on appeal, and the reasons were that, number one, they said that with respect to the due process claim, that DWSD had, during the pendency of the litigation, changed their rules and their procedures, and that because they had changed them, then they could not weigh in on whether they were violating them or not. There was not a record for that. With respect to equal protection claim, they said without any findings, without any facts in the record to support this conclusion that they reached, they said, well, maybe it's more complicated to turn off a business's water than it is to turn off a homeowner's homeowner's water, and therefore they're not similarly situated. And they said, get out of here. They threw us out of court. But to compound the offense, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, anticipating that we were probably going to come back, without any prompting at all by us, went so far as to say, if you're thinking about coming back to challenge these shutoffs on grounds that people have a basic right to water, don't even think about it. Because we think it's terrible that people's water is being shut off, but under our laws, and as far as what we see as the court, water is not a fundamental right. And so we were left hamstrung, because that's exactly what we were thinking about doing, under a theory that's called substantive due process. So procedural due process is as I described. That's when they take your life, liberty, or property without giving you an opportunity to come in and to challenge it. Substantive due process is when they're trying to deprive you of a fundamental right, and if they're trying to do that, then no matter how much procedural due process they give you, it's not enough. That in order to deprive someone of a fundamental right, then they have to demonstrate that the interest of the government is compelling. And that not only is it compelling, but what they're trying to do is the most narrowly tailored method of depriving you of that right. So we were left thinking, wow, we've got nowhere to go here. And so for a moment, we decided that what we would do is that we would take a different route. We would say, governor can fix this. And so we petitioned the Department of Health and Human Services and said, look, you know, with water being shut off in such large numbers in Detroit, it's conducive to the spread of disease. And it creates a health hazard for the people of Detroit. And so therefore, we would like for you to prohibit that in the city of Detroit. They wrote back to us and said, no, we don't think that that's a hazard at all. And we said, well, let's take it straight to Gretchen Whitmer. All right? We went there and we made the same argument, same pitch, and we got a letter back from her lawyer saying, no, we don't see any connection between the lack of water and disease. Now, let me, the scripture has already been read. But I want to lift up one verse, okay, from Isaiah 41:17. It says, when the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue fails for thirst, I, the Lord, will hear them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. And he did not. All right? Because we got that note back from the governor only a few weeks before COVID hit the city of Detroit hard, before it hit the state of Michigan hard. And I always say that whether it was intended or not, this was a very racist scenario. Because what they did is when we complained about the spread of intestinal illnesses because of the lack of water and that kind of thing, and the spread of it in the city of Detroit, they may not have been consciously thinking this, but effectively what they were thinking is that, well, that's the city of Detroit, a bunch of poor black people, they get some intestinal illnesses, okay, so big deal. We don't see any connection between the lack of water and disease. But then when COVID came, they said, oh my goodness, if the city of Detroit becomes ground zero for the spread of COVID, this thing is running wild and it's running rampant. It's going to spread into the suburbs, the places where people live who we care about. And so they wasted no time in coming down to Detroit and saying, we're declaring a moratorium on water shutoffs in the city of Detroit. I mean, God's amazing. And let me tell you something else. Let me tell you how I know he was involved in all of this. Okay? You know, I mentioned when we filed the first lawsuit, Leiter versus the city of Detroit. Okay? Right after we filed it, okay, the judge ordered that we engage in voluntary mediation with the city. Okay? On the first day of mediation, I got in my car and started to drive downtown. And don't you know, it had been raining all night long. And everywhere I went, it was flooded. I tried to go here, road closed, it's flooded. I tried to go there, road closed, it's flooded. And I said, I get it, God. They're trying to say that they can't provide water. You're showing the world that there is more than enough water for everybody. So when we were faced with this situation where they were not willing to make this a permanent situation where mass water shutoffs were prohibited, we filed another lawsuit. And this time we said, we got you, okay? Because if you don't think that water is a fundamental right, we'll look at the list of things that the courts have said are fundamental rights. And don't you know that we found that one of the fundamental rights that they recognize is that everyone is entitled to bodily integrity, which means that the government cannot violate one's bodily integrity. And we said that when you shut off water, then basically what you're doing is you're clearing the way for all kinds of pathogens and germs and infection to enter into the bodies of the people of the city of Detroit. And so we filed a case based on substantive due process, based on the fundamental right of bodily integrity. And we also filed it on the basis of racial discrimination because along with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, we were able to document the fact that the overwhelming majority of mass water shutoffs were taking place in black communities, black neighborhoods, okay? Now, this is where it gets interesting because when you file a lawsuit, whoever you file against has the right to come into court and to say that the lawsuit itself is deficient, that all of the allegations that they make in the lawsuit, even if they are true, they don't allege the things that are necessary to entitle them to a judgment by the court. Okay? That's under Federal Court Rule 12b-6, right? So the defendants, we filed Whitmer, we filed the city, we sued everybody, okay? And they came in and they filed motions claiming that the case should be dismissed under 12b-6. We had a hearing on the motion. It was briefed, it was argued, and nothing happened. Okay? When you have that kind of a motion filed, you're not allowed to move forward with the lawsuit at all until that motion has been decided, because presumably, if the case is one that's deficient, then the court does not allow you to waste the time of the defendants by engaging in discovery and other procedural things that are related to litigating a case. And so we got no ruling on that case. It's been more than 5 years. We still have not received a ruling on that case, and that case has gone nowhere. Nowhere. But, as I said before, God does not make promises that he does not keep. And even though we as lawyers who, were standing there prepared to try and duke it out and to fight it out, effectively, God came in and said, no, I got this. I got this. All right? And even though we were doing nothing in the courts, God was busy putting it into the hearts and the minds of the people that control the water to not engage in mass water shutoffs for that entire time. He put it into their hearts to develop a program called Lifeline, which made water affordable, at least for the moment, for a large number of people. Now that program is in serious jeopardy, okay? And there are people who are fighting hard in order to put into place the funding that's necessary for that to become a permanent feature of the city's water services. However, it's worth noting this, that had we been allowed to litigate that case, the most that we would have been able to accomplish with the lawsuit is to achieve what's called injunctive relief. The most that we would have been able to do is to get the court to issue a ruling that says you cannot engage in mass water shutoffs anymore, and that's all that the court can do. God said, that's not enough. We don't need just an end to mass water shutoffs. We need to make water affordable for people. And he said, you're not going to get that through the courts, so I got this. And he took care of it by moving these people to develop a water affordability program, which in many respects went beyond what we had even been thinking about advocating, offline as it relates to the litigation. So he's there, and he's moving. And I think one of the great errors that we make as people of faith is that we can fall into the trap sometimes of believing or thinking of God as this distant, deity who lacks a personality, who's not in communication with us, is not in relationship with us. We just ritualistically go through the motions of saying prayers, coming to church, doing this and doing that, without really thinking of him as the friend that he is. But he is very much a friend. And he has a personality. A serious personality. He's got a sense of humor. He can get very angry, as we know. He has endless compassion and endless patience, and above all, endless love. Who among us does not want to have a personal relationship with someone like that, particularly when he created the entire universe? Right? And so the error that we make many times is that we may say our prayers, asking for things, confessing things, making this request and that request, and say, okay, I prayed, let me go see what do I have to do. I need to go make this, I need to do this, I need to go run this errand, all right? When we talk to God, our experience is enhanced and enriched if we pause and wait for him to answer. And he always answers. We just don't always hear because we're so busy moving on to the next thing. And so the lesson, I think, in this water experience is we need to pause and listen and watch for when he acts and when he responds. Okay? We had and have a problem with mass water shutoffs, but we can see by looking carefully at what has happened with respect to its history, that God was very much responding, very much involved, very much enacting. And if we don't recognize that, we miss the opportunity to understand just how loving and compassionate and how helpful he is and how helpful he can be. And so that is the lesson that we take from it, that he's there, he wants a relationship with us. Let's have one. Let's talk to him. Let's pause. Let's be still. Let's listen. Let's observe and be enriched and blessed, because he does not make promises that he does not keep. Okay? God will fulfill everything he said he would do. He will fulfill every promise to you. Don't give up on God, because he won't give up on you. He's able. He's able. He's very able. Thank you very much.